even before lockdown, the Indian economy had slowed down to a 3.1% growth rate, which is a very low growth rate compared to what we have seen in India. Like we are used to a growth rate of 7%, 8%, 9% year on year. And compared to that, 3.1% is already it's a slowdown. Okay, it's like in 2008 when there was a global recession, India did not have a recession. We just had a slowdown, and it was still not as slow as 3.1%. That is very slow. Okay, and this was already happening, and then the pandemic happened, and there was COVID-19, and there was lockdown, and everything pretty much shut down. It was a terrible situation, and we didn't know what's going to happen. And the quarter that, in the March quarter, January to March, that quarter itself, quarter 4 of the last financial year, that itself showed a contraction of the economy. And it was understandable. Okay, there was a pandemic, etc., but it was scary. But we didn't know how much contraction will happen in the quarter after that. So the lockdown quarter, let's call it, right? April, May, June, right? So, that number just has come out, right? So it was terrible. It was a 24% contraction of the economy. What does it mean? How bad is that? Like, just to put it into perspective, we never had this much of a recession, ever, right? We never had a 24% contraction of our economy. And this is a contraction that, so there is recession. And so in the subprime crisis during 2008, which is something that we remember from our living memory, 2008, what was the situation? There was 0.25% contraction of the economy in the US. 0.25, not even 1%. And there was so much, fear, and banks were going bankrupt, and there was so much that happened. The US government pumped in a lot of money into the economy to prevent the recession from happening. And a lot of things were done. A lot of things happened. Like, a lot of reforms happened, and so much happened. And we are talking about a 24% recession. That's crazy. Like, it's unthinkable. It is unheard of. And there was, if you have a 10% contraction, annual contraction, this is a quarter, to remember that. If there's an annual contraction of more than 10%, that is called what? That is called a depression. Okay, a depression is when there are two situations when you call it a depression. That there is a recession, which, like, the economy continues, a negative growth continues for 3 years. Okay, that is depression. Or in a single year, the negative growth is more than 10%. Then also it's called a depression by economists, right? Now, in the history of modern economics and industrialized society, in the last 100 years, there has been only one depression, and that is the Great Depression. Okay, before the Second World War, for 10 years, 1929 to 1938, there was, year on year of contraction and suffering. And you might have seen movies of the Great Depression from that era. It was a very bad time, right? And then the Second World War started, and it kind of there was a flurry of economic activity to support the war effort in America and other places, and that helped the economies to get out of recession. But anyway, after such a long time, it was time for the economy to cycle back and have a good economy. But in India, we have never seen anything like this. So are we even mentally prepared for something like this? Have you imagined? Most of us really have not imagined what this is going to be like. We can't even I can't imagine what is a 24% contraction going to look like. And is it going to get better? If you remember what happened after demonetization, the effect of demonetization, we thought initially was big and all of that. But the real effect came much later. The economy slowed down, economic output fell. It happened much later. Like the effect is like a knock-on effect, like first order effect, and then the second order effect, then the third order effect, and it goes on. Like, one thing happens, and it takes a long time for the entire cycle to play out and all the bad effects to take place. So the effects of lockdown is going to be huge, and it's going to be unprecedented. It's already, we had an unprecedented effect. But if we think that this is it, and that there won't be anything ahead of this, then we'll be grossly wrong. Things are getting better. Yes, things have started opening up, lockdowns is eased, and business is starting, but there are also long-term effects. We are only looking at short-term effects, but there are also long-term effects. And it is highly likely that we will get to a depression from here. And a depression is something that, can it be avoided? Sure, it can be avoided. There's an economic policy in the hand of the government. Government can ease the availability of credit. It can pump money into the economy. It can do a few things, but that also is limited. It cannot keep pumping money into the economy, because that will lead to hyperinflation or very heavy inflation, causing a lot of problems. So in India, the government tries to keep the inflation around 5 to 10% and not more than that. And that is probably, again, what RBI is going to try to do. But there is always a risk that if you do more inflation than that, then there will be more harm than good. So there's only so much money the government can pump into the economy when the economic output is not increasing, when the GDP is not increasing. It's very hard, right? On the other hand, it can do reforms. So the government can reform the economy, right? So they can. So, for example, why did we grow so much after 1991 and we did not grow so much before that? It is because that we introduced a lot of reforms in our economy. So the government introduced very powerful reforms. For example, we opened up our economy. We removed license Raj. We allowed foreign capital to come to India. We allowed foreign investors to come and invest in India. We allowed foreign loans to come into India, and there were so many things that was done. So those reforms had really, really helped India to grow at a breakneck speed and become one of the fastest growing countries in the world after China. And we have held that spot for a long time. But now it is a very different situation. If you look at the situation, India had one of the worst negative growth out of all the G7 countries. All other countries had much better situation. India had the worst negative growth. There is no comparison, right? So that is definitely a reason to be worried. That is definitely a reason to be concerned that how things are going to play out. But one option that definitely our government has is to introduce more reforms. Generally, not whenever you do a reform, somebody gets upset. Okay, somebody will not be happy with the reform. So what are some of the reforms? For example, one very powerful reform that the government did recently, which is likely to have a far-reaching impact on the agricultural sector as well as agricultural export and several other sectors, and a huge number of population in the country, is a reform on the FRBM Act. Okay, there is an FRBM Act which controls the mandi system. So basically, if you look at India today, you cannot invest private capital into agriculture. You cannot have corporate run agriculture, for example. But those things are being changed. Obviously, there are people who are unhappy about it, but at the same time, this reform has been done, and when the reform actually takes effect and those things start happening, we will definitely see a growth in output in those sectors. And it's a matter of time that it will happen. So there are many other reforms that are possible. And reforms in terms of law and justice is a major area for that. So for example, it's a huge inefficiency that businesses have to spend too much time chasing justice in the court of law. Civil court system barely works. It takes ages to enforce a contract. It takes ages to to actually, insolvency and bankruptcy was improved a lot, but that was the case for a long time. To close down a company, it is so hard in India. So there are such many things which needs reforms, and it will encourage more people to invest money into India. It will encourage uh, foreign investment and foreign capital to come into India, foreign loan to be available in India, and it is possible. It is going to happen, and I believe that the government has no other choice but to do a lot of reforms right now, because without reforms, we'll really not see any kind of growth going forward, and it will be very hard to recover out of this situation. If we have to avoid a depression in our country, which is a 3 years of recession, or a contraction for the whole year, which is more than 10%, is definitely we need some real powerful measures that will change that. Okay. And it has happened before. It's not that India has never done powerful reforms. We have done powerful reforms in the 90s. We have done in the early 2000s, really powerful reforms. Disinvestment, government getting out of businesses, selling businesses, taking the money and investing it into infrastructure. So you're likely to see all of that. So if, for example, the government sells its stakes in many, there's a huge row about privatization, but we are likely to see a lot more privatization going forward. The government cannot do anything. Its hands are tied. It's going to privatize itself, sell off assets, raise money, and invest it into bringing the economy back from like a brink of a disaster, right? So that is the only choice. And how will it do it? So government will sell assets, take the money and invest it into infrastructures. It might give it to give it to the banks to be lent to small and medium businesses, employment generators. So the economy has to generate a lot of employment today. And as long as employment is generated over the next 6 months, 1 year, things will go back to normal. To give you a data, in the month of March, 39 crore Indians were employed. Okay, so we have a huge country, 120 crore, I don't know, 125 crore population. Out of that, 39 crore people were gainfully employed, right? 39 crores. Okay, India already has a low work participation because there are so many, the women's rate of participation in Indian economy is very low. Okay, if you look at organized sector and even the unorganized sector, you'll see that there are way too many men working and very few women working comparatively, right? And the participation rate is even worse than countries like Bangladesh, Pakistan at present. Now, anyway, so 39 crore individuals were employed in India. During the recession, so during the lockdown, 19 crore lost jobs. So 20 crore retained their jobs, at least according to government data, 20 crore retained jobs. And then the lockdown was removed in the month of May. The first level of lockdown was removed and factories started opening, some work started opening, and then there were still 10 crore people got back their jobs. So from 20 crore, it went up to 30 crore. So then people said, oh, this is nice. The employment loss is not permanent, it was temporary. But 9 crore people still did not get their jobs back. And we don't know, we thought it is the end of unemployment or the people who got back their job maybe permanent. It's not true, because now more and more companies are shutting shop. So initially there are companies which are able to withstand the initial lockdown, but the recession that is coming, that is proving to be a much bigger problem for these companies, right? Even if you manage to keep your doors open during the lockdown, after lockdown, as businesses have started opening, people have joined back work. Now they are struggling even more, and it is proving a bigger challenge for companies. And so many companies are in really bad situation. They're not able to pay their employees. They're trying to lay off employees. They're trying to issue pay cuts to employees, and it is happening right now as we speak. And there is no clear indication as to how these companies will come out of it. So there are few ways they can do it. They can get further capital. They can get investment. They can get loans from the banks. Investment is not happening. Like, there is no confidence that investors have today to invest in these companies. Very little. I mean, there are some companies which are getting investment, but not all companies are even investable. There are a lot of businesses, not even companies, like SMEs, right? The SMEs employ 80% of the workforce in the country, and they're not going to get investments. They're not investable businesses, so they're not going to get investments. Now the other option is to go and raise money from the bank. To do that, you have to have assets. Most of the companies which have assets already have raised loans, and many of them are unable to return. So banks are unwilling to give any further loans to them, because banks already are troubled in India. We were at the verge of a banking crisis. Government already has been trying to recapitalize the banks, and now with this recession, the banks are not sure how they are going to get their money back that they've already lent. To lend more money is very difficult unless government gives them more money to lend. And government is trying to do such things like working capital loans and all of that, but it hasn't really panned out very well till now, right? It's not that people are getting easy access to loan in our country to keep the businesses open. So that has not happened so much. So that means many businesses are shutting down, and many more will be shutting down in the months to come, and accordingly people will be losing jobs, creating a bigger crisis than what we are seeing today. And this seems to be pretty much inevitable. Like, it's the foregone conclusion that it will happen. The way to come out of it, of course, is that it depends on how government responds, how government, actually, is government able to recapitalize banks? Is government able to make the money reach in hands of the SMEs, which are the employment generators? Are a lot of companies going to shut down? So one thing that the government did is that it shut down the functioning of the IBC, right? There's a moratorium on insolvency proceedings. So you cannot start new insolvency proceedings for a year, right? Out of that 1 year, 5 months, 6 months is already gone, another 6 months. Maybe government may give another extension for another 6 months, for all we know. But the moment that happens, there are so many claims that are going to come up. So it's not like just because people are not being taken to insolvency court or to NCLT that they are actually not insolvent. They're unable to meet their expenses. They're unable to function. They're unable to pay their employees. They're unable to pay their suppliers. So it's already happening. So I think, we have to be aware of what is going on to even start preparing. I don't want to scare you and say that, this is a really bad economy, nothing is possible. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that we have to recognize what is going on. We have to understand where we stand. We have to understand that there is such a huge economic, backlash, huge economic consequence ahead of us. If we don't recognize it, then we will not act like it. We will not prepare for it. We will not take action to protect ourselves. It's very important to understand how serious this recession is. Is it going to be a depression or not? Probably in our life, we'll never see another recession or depression like this. Hopefully, our parents haven't seen this kind of depression or recession in their lifetime. Their parents also haven't seen, right? 1930s, probably our great grandfathers have seen something like this. Now, in our time, we are unlucky enough to face this, but we have to realize how serious this is. Now, let me tell you, because it is highly likely that we are going to face a depression. Then what happens in a depression? Sure, you would want to know what is a depression, right? Would you like to know how depression is? Yeah, so there's a comment by Sushil Shankar that privatization that is happening is only for crony capitalists is happier. This is a danger, right? So it is very important that the government gets the maximum possible revenue out of the privatization. So if a company is being sold, let's say a Coal India is being sold or a railways is being sold, then it is very important that it is not sold to a low bidder, somebody who is not paying enough, right? It needs to be sold to companies, maybe foreign investors, maybe people who will bring a lot of money into our country, maybe even fine if it is an Indian company, but it has to be a fair process, so it goes to the highest bidder, right? Because it's important. If you say you're selling the asset, how does it help unless you're generating enough cash out of it, right? Because the government desperately needs cash. So I'm not sure, I don't think, honestly, the government doesn't have a choice. Even if the government had a choice before this, Now government really doesn't have a choice. And in India, economy is a very, very important political factor. So even if you look at it politically, government doesn't have any room to mess around anymore with the economy. Government has to be very, very careful. And if it is not, then like we are all doomed basically, right? So literally we have to start thinking as to are we going to, like, there was a time when I was a child, everybody dreamed of getting out of India because it was impossible to make a career in India. It was impossible to do anything in India. That's not the India we lived in, right? We lived in an India where I could dream of being an entrepreneur. I could start a company. I could, have this. But then that won't be the case because our economy will be, if the government fails at this juncture to take action, if it engages in crony capitalism and so on, then I don't think, how we are going to come out of this. That will be a terrible, terrible situation. We don't have assets. We don't have a lot of oil that we can keep selling to foreign countries or so on, right? We have to rely on, their government has a few assets. It has to raise as much money as possible and try to rescue the economy. So it's very, very critical. Okay. So coming back, so let us understand what happens in a depression, right? If there's a depression, how is it going to play out? What will happen in the economy? Very important to understand, because accordingly, you'll be able to figure out what to do in your career, in your business. If you want to understand what happens in a depression, this is a dream time of an economist. If you're an economist, you'll be very happy because everybody should listen to you now. Okay, so let's start. I'll just present this. Okay, so this is definitely the biggest recession of our time. Nobody has seen it. Not our time, it's the biggest recession. Probably it could be worse than right now, the way it is in India, it could be worse than the Great Depression. If we are not careful, if the government doesn't take all the action, it could be even worse. That is the situation today, right? So let's see. So biggest recession, how should we deal with it? What is an economic depression? Depression, I explained to you, there are two definitions. One is that more than 10% contraction of the economy for the whole year, or negative growth for 3 years back to back is a depression. Now, it definitely looks like we'll end up having a more than 10% contraction of our economy, because this is only the first quarter of this financial year. There are 3 more quarters to go. So if the government is able to drastically change something, some monetary policy, something happens in our favor, the corona goes away soon, the vaccine really works, I don't know, some things may really work out also, you never know. And in that case, we might not actually face a depression. Somehow we manage to avoid the worst that can happen. But otherwise, some really strong measures not happening, we are definitely looks like we're going into a depression, which is a more than 10% annual contraction of the economy. And not only that, it could last for a long time. There's no guarantee that it'll happen for a year and then it'll be over. We could see more negative growth next year and the year after that and year after that, unless there is some concrete work, some concrete way. But to remember that we have an inherent growth potential in our country, right? That is why we have been growing in the past at 6%, 7%, 8%, 9%, 10% also, right? We have grown at 10% also at a point. Now, that is the inherent potential of our country. Now, keeping that in mind, there is one hope that if things go well, things will take care of themselves and, we'll again start, beating all these odds. So that can happen. It is not impossible. So we should not lose all hope, but definitely a very difficult situation. Okay. So next slide. So what happens in a depression? Let's see. Okay. One is that there will be a substantial increase in unemployment. How much unemployment? It could be a 20% drop in employment. Even a 8%, 10% drop is disastrous, but a 20% employment drop could happen at this rate of contraction of the economy. And there is definitely a drop in available credit. So available credit means, when there is money in the economy, you are ready to give loans, you are ready to lend to the bank, you keep your money in the bank also. and bank was also ready to give credit to people. Now that is going to change because nobody has money to lend basically because of the economic activity output going down. And so this is a further problem, that because see, when there's a lot of credit in the market, you can easily get a loan, you can start a business. People start even like small businesses, a small shop, a thela, anything. Like people take micro credit and start things. Even that increases economic output a great deal. And big businesses, SMEs, everybody borrow money and they start businesses, and that way the economy grows a lot. But when there is no credit, then people cannot start businesses. Okay, it's very hard, much harder to start businesses, much harder to grow such businesses. Okay, and there is diminishing output and productivity. So output diminishing, so you can understand that the GDP is declining, means there is less output. So the factories are not working all the time. People are not able to sell their products. The farmers are not able to sell their products, or they are not able to. So they are deciding not to produce so much, and then productivity gets impacted. So for example, if you look during the lockdown, factories were shut. People could not go to work. There are two shops. One is allowed to open. The other has to alternate day shop is allowed to open. The other has to keep shut. All these kind of things. There's so much restriction in a restaurant. Let's say at a time, 100 people can sit. Suddenly you have to do a 6 feet distance or 8 feet distance. So only 30 people can sit now. So this is a reduction in productivity, reduction in output and this will continue for a while. And anyway, even if when there is no lockdown, no pandemic, there is still a diminishing productivity and output, and it is happening even today. We are having huge reduction in productivity and output because of all this coronavirus related restriction, which will make things worse. Okay, then there is consistent negative GDP growth. So there is like a GDP growth keeps going down, which is, we understand. Bankruptcies is a very scary thing, because it is not that one company is going bankrupt, right? So just imagine that you are let's say you are running a construction company, you're a builder. If you go bankrupt, then it is not only your company which goes bankrupt. Maybe the cement supplier also goes bankrupt because you owed him so much money. You're not able to pay him back. He might go bankrupt. Maybe there's an architect who had a lot of dues. Architecture firm had dues from this builder, not getting paid. He goes bankrupt, right? There is some some other company which was providing manpower to this company, and now it has no work. They go bankrupt. So it's like a knock-on effect. If the builders have borrowed a lot of money from the banks and they're not able to pay back the banks, the bank goes bankrupt. So bankruptcy is a terrible thing because it doesn't happen with one person. If one person goes bankrupt, it is possible that the whole town goes bankrupt because of this one person going bankrupt. And that is a huge problem. And a whole sector going bankrupt, whole city going bankrupt. This has happened. And it's a big, big concern. Stopping bankruptcies will be a huge priority of the government, at least should be. And then there are sovereign debt defaults. Sometimes it becomes so bad that a country also fails to pay its debts. We have seen in 2018, Greece had this problem, and the entire European economy was going nuts. If for a while stock exchanges were, the stock prices were falling in Europe and USA and India also. Sovereign debt crisis is a huge thing because the debt, where did it come from? Banks have lent it, other countries have given money. So everybody is in a very dire situation. If a country is failing to pay its debt obligations, right? India has also gotten a lot of debt from international organizations, from other countries. Even there are other, many countries have been borrowing money from International Monetary Fund and World Bank and other institutions, BRICS Bank and so on. India borrows also. And there are other countries giving loans. So sovereign debt defaults can have a very huge, and private investors, of course, private investors give money to the country. There are bonds that are issued by the sovereign debt bonds. The Indian government has such bonds. For example, Kisan Vikas Patra, it's a sovereign debt. It's a government has issued taken money from you and promised to return it to you. And the government fails. It's a sovereign debt default, and it can be disastrous, as we saw in the case of Greece. And it might happen a lot after this coronavirus crisis. We might see many sovereign debt defaults across the world. Then we have when this happens, there's always reduced trade and global commerce, and this is anyway happening. There is a lot of reduction in global commerce and global trade because of coronavirus. Bear market in stocks. Bear market in stocks means the stock prices falling. Okay, this is very interesting. In India, we did not have the stock prices falling. They have been going up and up. Stock prices in India has gone up and up. It has gone up and up in the US also. And despite US being officially in a recession as of yesterday, the price of stocks have gone up a lot. Why is this happening? It is because government has pumped in a lot of money. At least in the USA, that is the case. Government has pumped in trillions of dollars into the economy to protect the economy from going into the recession. Now, this money has found its way into the stock market. People are buying stocks with that money, and the price of stocks is growing up. But it is going up. It is speculative. In India also, the price has gone up. It is speculation by mostly Indian investors. Foreign investors have pulled out a lot of money from India. But the Indians have kept buying, and the price have been going up and up. Unrealistic prices. Even the RBI governor has said that there is no connection between reality and the stock prices that we are seeing. Okay, so that is already said even by the RBI governor. Even then, the stock prices going up. Definitely, one issue is sustained, asset price volatility. What happens is that the asset price is highly volatile, right? It keeps changing now and then, and there is no understanding. There's no clarity as to what is going on. Like today something is worth 20 rupees. Tomorrow it is 50 rupees. Tomorrow again 35 rupees. The day after that it is 15 rupees, and there's volatile. Price is just uncertain because sometimes there's suddenly a huge spark of demand, and then people are rushing to buy it, and then there is suddenly no demand, and all confusing situation, and the currency value falls. So Indian rupee will become more and more expensive compared to dollar because of the recession, or it could improve also. Because if the dollar falls too much, there's a bigger recession in the US, and India doesn't have as much recession, then we can see the dollar price appreciating, which creates another problem of export. Export becomes more expensive, and then export stops. And when there is a depression, there is low to no inflation or even deflation. So inflation, normally you will think that inflation is an increase in price of things, right? So you'll think that inflation is bad, but it is not. Inflation is very important for the economy to function normally. There should not be hyperinflation. There should not be fluctuating inflation. The steady inflation is very good. And deflation, on the other hand, is terrible, because if there's a deflation, then the price of things is going down. So the output goes even further down, because if today the price of a pencil is 1 rupee and tomorrow nobody's ready to buy it for 1 rupee, so I am forced to reduce the price to 50 paisa, then I will not produce as many pencils also. It might not be profitable to produce so many pencils. I may produce far less pencils, and some of the people may even shut down their business and go away and not produce any more pencils. So deflation is terrible for the economy. And when there is a depression or even recession for that matter, savings rate increase among those who can save, because people who have money, they don't want to invest it, they don't want to lend it, they want to hold on to their money. So they save their money at all costs. So this is a good thing, actually. When the good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing is that all this saved money eventually will get invested later on when the economy starts recovering. But until then, people are not putting this money to a productive use. It is being hoarded. It is not being put to a productive use, which is a very problematic thing. We need money to be invested for the economy to come back on track. So where do we stand today? Right? We know 23.9% negative growth, 24% negative growth. It is incredible, unheard of. What is the way out? Okay. What is the way out is that you have to understand. See, I am not talking about the whole country. I am talking about you. You in your position, how can you manage yourself? How can you deal with this economy in a way that it does not leave you destroyed, it doesn't leave you in the dust, it does not destroy your financial condition. So what is the way out? We need to understand what will happen going forward. Let's start with the businesses. Like, what will happen to businesses? Number one, businesses with bad cash flows and less working capital will go down. So what is a cash flow? You understand a cash flow, right? Even a business is profitable, it can still have a bad cash flow. What is a bad cash flow? Bad cash flow is that you have to invest first and the money comes later. So your expenses happen before and your earnings come later. This is a problem. Okay, this is a bad cash flow, negative cash flow. So even if you are profitable, if your cash flows are not good, basically you need to take your earning first and then service later. So your expense happens after your earning. As long as that is true, you have a good cash flow. Or otherwise also, like you have last quarter's earning coming in, so this quarter you can spend whichever way. Basically you have a steady cash flow that is positive. It's very important to survive a depression or a recession, for that matter, a long recession. Less working capital. So do you have enough working capital? So if you have a bad month or two, if you have a bad quarter or two, can you survive? Can you come back as a business? That depends on the working capital you have. And if you have less working capital, it's a problem. Businesses that are not very competitive, but depend on things like location, personal relationships, low price, lower margin, are first to get into trouble. So if you're not competitive, competitive is that my product is better, my service is better, okay, better than others. I am offering a better product at a better price point. This is competitiveness, right? Other people cannot easily outsell me. Okay, they cannot do anything to stop my growth, or at least I will survive. But if I am relying on, I'm not competitive, but I'm relying on like location, right? So sometimes you'll buy things from a shop, even the price is a little higher and the product is not as good, you might still buy it there because you don't want to go so far to a far away shop. So you buy at that location. Like haircut, you probably not go to a hair salon which is 5 kilometers away. You'll go to a hair salon which is nearby, which is why there are so many hair salons, right? And so hair salons are a great example that, location, there are location dependent business and there are so many others. But this is a time when people are ready to travel 5 kilometers if they can save money during recession. So your location matters less. Similarly, personal relationships. So you have a great personal relationship, then people are like, yeah, I like this guy, let's give him business. But that may not work during a recession, okay? Because during a recession, people will want to say, okay, I like you, but is your product the cheapest? Is your product the best? What is your, am I buying it just because of a relationship, or am I buying it because it really makes sense for me to buy economically? Because people are tightening their belt. So relationships go out of the window very often. Low price, low margin, right? So if you're relying on low price, that, I am the cheapest in the market, or my margin is the thinnest in the market, so I'm making the least profit in the market, that is a problem, because somebody will come and say, I am willing to do even less price, I am ready to take even lower margin, because it's a bad time, other competitors will say so. So that way everybody may suffer, but you are vulnerable in that situation. If you are relying on only just low price and low margin to stay in the business, then you are in big trouble. Similarly, businesses that are less efficient, right? So what is efficiency? Efficiency is so what is efficiency? Efficiency is that you are producing more with less. So you have less people but more output. You have, maybe it's because of technology, maybe it is because of your very good process, or so on, right? So if you are highly efficient, like McDonald's is a highly efficient business, right? They are fast, they are quick, they are cheap, they are profitable, like highly efficient, right? Everything happens on the clock, everything is measured. So that kind of businesses do very well during recession, whereas businesses which are not efficient do not survive. Okay. On the other hand, there are brands. People are building a strong brand, strong loyalty to a brand. people remember the name, people trust it, then that is also a very good thing. And people who haven't done that are in trouble. Let's see if there are any comments. Okay, your questions you can start posting. Okay, I'm happy to start taking question at this point. There's a comment by Aisha Siddiq. Is there any feedback link for this session? Good content. Thank you, Aisha. You can give us feedback on email. I can share my email here, or you can give us a feedback on our YouTube channel also. Right. This is my email ID. You can get in touch. Ramanuj@iplayers.in. So you can reach out to me on my email and give me feedback. But you can also leave feedback on our YouTube channel. We'll be posting this video also on YouTube. You can go to YouTube channel and leave some comment anywhere you like. Or you can actually write a little about this on LinkedIn and mention LawSikho. And I am going to do these sessions every single day on all weekdays, not on weekend. Every single weekday this month, I'll do one session every day. So maybe you can share the news and more people can join us next time. That'll be fantastic, Aisha. Okay, so next point, let's start with businesses. What are the businesses? Those who do not have strong sales funnels or marketing channels or business models are very vulnerable. So you need in strong sales funnel, marketing channel. If these things are strong, then you will survive this depression and recession. Businesses which fail to predict what is ahead or prepare for eventualities, right? A lot of businesses are like, it's okay, things will be normal, don't worry. It's not like that. You have to understand where we stand, what is really going on. If you say that, no, things will be fine, like it was before the pandemic, it's not going to be. It is a recession is on our head. The biggest recession in the century is on our head. We have to deal with it, right? We have to prepare for what is ahead. So a lot of businesses during the lockdown went out of business. Why? Because they did not adapt to the changes. They did not think ahead. They did not prepare for the eventualities. They assumed that things will be normal. Soon, in 1 month, it will be fine. 2 months, it will be fine. 3 months, it will be fine. It has been 5 months. It's still not fine. It is getting worse by the day. So preparedness matters a lot. Are you preparing for eventualities? Are you preparing for a tough time? Then you will probably survive because you will take those actions which will help you to survive. But a lot of people don't do that. These are false optimists, okay, who will be like, no, in 3 months it will be fine, it will be back to normal. It didn't happen. It's not back to normal, right? In 5 months, it's 6 months right now. Businesses that fail to adapt. Almost all businesses were impacted by the pandemic. Some adapted quickly, others could not change. So you can guess which ones are still standing. Sorry. So that is about businesses. The reason I was telling you about businesses is so that you can easily understand what is happening with employees and professionals as well. Okay. If you are working at a job with an employer that falls in one of the categories above, then you should be careful, right? I told you about the kind of companies, the companies which are not adapting to the time, the companies which have no preparedness, the companies which don't have a strong business model, they are not competitive, they are relying on location, personal relationships, they don't have really strong business model, then you should be worried. Those companies are not going to survive. If you are working for such a company, you should be looking for alternatives already, right? Because those companies don't survive this depression, for sure. And so same thing, if you're not competitive at your workplace, now there are companies which are going to be there, right? There are companies which grow bigger during a depression or a recession, grow bigger. There are many companies which were started during depression not a depression, but a recession. Like Google started during a recession, okay? So many other companies have been started during a recession and they have done very well. So do not think that recession means no companies are growing. Some companies are doing very well. There are companies which are growing like anything now. For example, SaaS companies, software as a service companies, telemedicine companies, edutech companies. There are companies which are selling so many other things, like right now companies which are selling disinfectants and sanitization equipment and chemicals are doing very well. And there are so many companies doing really well. Apple is growing like anything. So there are a lot of tech companies doing really well, right? So you have to understand which companies are doing well, which sectors of the business are doing well, what are the bright spots in the economy, and then you should work for those. If not immediately, you should be planning how are you going to transition in the next 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, because that is necessary. Otherwise, you will be finding yourself in trouble. If you are not competitive at your workplace, you can be easily replaced by a cheaper alternative. Then you will probably be replaced. Okay, this is no joke. If you are, imagine that the economy is so bad, the employers are struggling to have money, they need to reduce costs. So if you are a person who charge more money and not doing enough work, and the same work somebody else will be ready to do the same work for a cheaper price, for less money. So then they will be hired instead of you. Same problem for lawyers. It's not just working as an employee. Same problem for all the professionals also. So you have to realize that I have to be competitive. It's not only about the price. Just like a company cannot charge less money and survive, because somebody is always willing to charge even less than you. So you cannot win that game, that who's going to charge the least amount of money. So you have to be competitive, which means you are delivering results. What is competitive? That I produce results that others cannot easily produce. It will be very hard for you to find somebody who does the work as well as I do. You will not find somebody who does it better than me. Okay. So, and if I go away, then you will be in problem. This is competitiveness at workplace. So you are so good at your work. Very important. It is, if you're not good at work these days, if your work is easily replaceable, if your work doesn't matter, right? So it probably doesn't matter. Say if it is a data entry job that you have to look at the data on a paper and type it out in a computer, data entry, right? It's so easy. Anybody can do it. It's very easy to replace. Okay, somebody is charging 20,000, replace and hire somebody and pay that person 15,000 if you can find somebody. It's a very easy job, easily replaceable. On the other hand, a surgeon is not easily replaceable. Somebody who's a great designer, not easily replaceable. You can't find good designers now and then. Somebody is a good writer, hard to find a good writer. I can tell you, I've been trying to hire good writers, very hard to find. So you have to be something which is good, a good lawyer, somebody who comes up with great arguments, drafts great agreements, a good negotiator, somebody who has a great strategy for litigation, hard to replace, hard to find another person like that. So you have to be competitive. In your relationship and alliances at the workplace are not strong and well aligned, you could be at a risk at a time like this. People who are better network and have taken time to develop a professional reputation are unlikely to be in great difficulty. So if you're, if you have a lot of fights in your work organization, like, your boss and you don't look eye to eye, maybe you are good at your work, but you are not comfortable with each other. Okay. Maybe they are not sure about your loyalty. You are great at your work, but they are not sure if you're going to stay back in the organization. Push comes to shove, they don't know what you will do. So then, when it comes to time, when you have to let people go, you might be the first one, because they are not sure about your loyalty to the organization. They are not sure that your relationships are all not properly aligned. Okay, it is something to think about. If your relationships in your organization are not great, it can create problem. Okay, then there is another big problem of professional reputation. So, even let's say my boss is unfair, fires me, doesn't like me, doesn't matter, because I am really good and I have a reputation. So if you have taken time to build a reputation of yourself in the organization, outside the organization, people know about the good work that you are capable of. In that case, people will go out of their way to hire you, right? Because even during the recession, it's not like that there are no jobs. There are jobs. But people want to hire sure shot hires. They don't want to take chances. They want to hire people who can come and save their company, literally, right? They have to save their company. They have to save their business. So if somebody is good enough to, great at sales, great at marketing, great at product development, great at anything, and efficient, produces results, such people will be hired. They are always in demand. Even during recession, during depression, there is an even higher demand for such people. Okay, incredible, but there is a higher demand. So if you're a great salesperson, there's a higher demand for you during recession than otherwise. So you're having a better time during recession. because people are not willing to do any experiments at that time. People don't have patience. People don't have time. Oh, theek hai, you join after 3 months, you perform. We'll see. No, you need to perform now. So we have no margin for error. So I will hire. I'll ready to pay more to hire a better person, somebody with a better reputation, better skills. And this is the reality. So people who are low skilled, have low reputation, are in trouble. But the people who have high reputation, high skill, high track record of great success, those people are going to charge even more and will be able to charge more. If you are not productive but manage to hang on to a job due to a good relationships, you are probably getting into trouble, because you are not good at your job, you're not productive, you're not delivering results, but people are not firing you because you're a nice person, they like you. So far they haven't fired. But when it comes to like this kind of economic situation, how long are they going to wait? It's a big issue. If you're not adapting to change with the needs and demands of the new economy, if you're not refocusing your efforts on the sectors that are big enough demand, you might be waiting for a disaster to happen. So in India right now, there's a huge demand for software developers. Do you know why? It is the highest demand right now in India. We are not able to hire software developers. You know why? Because right now the foreign country companies are hiring Indian developers, because rather than hiring an American developer, everybody is working from home. So they are used. They don't need people in New York. They don't need people in Silicon Valley. They don't need people sitting there. They're happy to hire, or in Russia or wherever. They're happy to hire an Indian developer. So Indian developers are getting hired in Europe. Indian developers are getting hired in all over the world, Southeast Asia, Middle East. Okay. And suddenly India, there is no problem for Indian software developers today that there's a recession, you won't get jobs. There is even more demand. So you have to understand that there are such opportunities. Maybe you are an Indian lawyer. Can you do something in another country? Can you assist a US lawyer in some work, reduce there's a huge difference in cost, right? Can you take advantage of that arbitrage somehow? So there are so many opportunities. LPOs will start doing well in this time because of the recession. So there are so many things that are happening. There are opportunities. You have to focus your effort where there is money. So for example, technology lawyers are doing very well. Technology law practice is doing very well. Tech companies which are selling things outside India, they are doing very well. And because of that, lawyers who are catering to them are doing very well. So you have to figure this out, that where is the demand and what are the bright sectors in the economy, and focus your effort on those things. You have to reskill yourself maybe to learn enough to get work in those sectors. Okay. So this is a question for you, that, what can you do to be personally? What can you do to be safe and stay strong during the recession? Or even if it becomes an economic depression, I hope it will not be, but it's very hard to say it will not be today. Uh, then what are you going to do? What's your plan? What's your strategy? Because if you don't come up with a strategy, if you're not thinking about it, it's like the ostrich burying its head in the sand. It's not going to help. You have to think, you have to plan, so that when it happens, you are ready. You have time, like, nothing will happen tomorrow, nothing will happen in a week, nothing will happen in a month, but you have to prepare for it. How are you going to counter this situation? One way to counter is through massive personal productivity. Can you increase your personal productivity a lot? Can you upskill yourself a lot, so that the opportunities which are there you can take? Okay. Where is the opportunity going to come 6 months down the line? Can you prepare yourself for that today? This is what you need to think. This is what you need to worry about. And your questions, please. You have any questions? I see there are so many of you here. I would love to know your questions. I have nothing more to share in the PowerPoint. Would love to know your questions. Okay. Happy to answer any questions anybody has at this point. I'll quickly check on YouTube also if anybody has asked me any questions.
Playing from Max MacBook Pro.
Okay, I don't see any relevant questions as such on YouTube also. No questions here. So how about you guys, Aritra, Aditi, Aisha, Gayatri, Priya, Subhasattva Bandyopadhyay, Sushil, you guys have no questions? No questions? I am done with my lecture. If you have any question, I'll be happy to answer, or we can wrap up. So that other, like the only explanation for no question is that, maybe I made no sense at all. Okay, if you have no questions, would love to get your feedback. Okay, very good question, Sushil. Question is, do you think people will avoid litigation? So see, it depends. People generally, as a rule, they're not going to get into litigation for fun right now, right? Nobody's going to get into litigation for fun. But at the same time, litigation will be there. Litigation will thrive at this time. If not right now, 6 months down the line, 10 months down the line, litigation will do well. I'll tell you why. Number one, a lot of India's litigation is essentially banking and finance litigation. Banks are the biggest litigator. NBFCs are the biggest litigators in our economy. Okay. So they will be very much have to go to litigation. So if somebody is not paying your dues, what do? You can't give up your claim. You have to go to the court. You have to go to insolvency. NCLT work will really thrive in some time, right? Right now, there's a lot of restructuring work that banks are having. Definitely, there's a hell lot of work in restructuring work that banks are doing. Litigation-wise, there will be a lot of claims. So many contracts have been violated during the lockdown. Okay, so there will be a lot of cases around those things because people have big claims. If you have a 10 lakh claim, you can give up. But can you give up a claim of 1 crore, 5 crore, 10 crore, and so on? Maybe there will be a lot more mediation. There will be a lot more online dispute resolution because it's more efficient, it's faster, and all of that. And the courts have realized, the government has realized that one of the many reforms is to make the dispute resolution quick, dispute resolution easier. So lawyers will get to do those work. It's not like there won't be any work. In litigation will thrive. There will be a lot of litigation work in those areas, like lockdown specific, COVID specific litigation. There will be a lot of it. And also there has been an increase in family litigation because so many people forced to live together, couples are fighting, families are fighting, and there's divorce rate has gone up in other countries, and in India also the family lawyers are reporting more cases during the lockdown. So it's like that. It's nothing to be happy about, but there are more family law cases and inheritance cases. These cases are coming. Partition matters are coming up in larger numbers. Wills, estate planning, will dispute, and all of that. Like it's going to see a major uptick. Definitely, it's seeing an uptick already, and will be more going forward. So litigation is going to have a pretty good time. Actually, even in transactional law, contract drafting, there is an increase. There is an increased awareness in people that, okay, I should have signed a contract because I did not sign a contract. This time I got into trouble. So a lot of informal businesses next time will start signing contracts. There will be an uptick. There is already an uptick in investment. People are seeking investment because, like I said, there are a lot of good companies in the country which are right now in a tough spot, but they need some capital and then they'll survive this. So they are desperately looking for capital, and investors have raised a lot of money. The private equity investors, venture capital investors are sitting on mountain of capital. They have to invest. They are watching and waiting, but they'll start investing at some point. There'll be a lot of joint venture disputes, a lot of shareholder disputes. In transaction side, there will be a lot of merger and acquisitions. Acquisitions will happen because right now I was talking to a banker yesterday, an investment banker, and he said that right now there is so many target companies. They're just buying one today, and like people are buying because there are companies which would not have sold otherwise. Now they have no option but to sell, so they're selling out. And there are so many other examples like that. There may be foreign investments coming in. Once the economy starts improving a little, we'll see a lot of foreign investment coming in. Government will go out of its way to make it easier for foreign investment to come in. I have a hope that government will be forced to do a reform which will see that the legal profession might be, there may be reforms in the legal profession, like foreign law firms might be allowed, because foreign investors demand that we want our own foreign lawyers to come and work with us in India. Not, and that demand will be again be there. And right now the government will be more willing to make some concessions to foreign investors. So we'll see a lot of reforms, a lot of changes going forward. It's a exciting time, so to speak, in terms of reforms. Not exciting in terms of economic situation, of course. Any other questions anybody has? Happy to answer. All right. So if there are no more questions, it's almost 10:15. Thank you everybody for joining me today, and join me tomorrow again at 9 p.m. I do these sessions every day. Tomorrow I have one more exciting session, and definitely I have a request. Please follow me on Twitter. Look me up on Twitter and follow me there. I will be sharing every day. I'll be sharing my what I'm going to talk about and interesting stuff about my sessions on Twitter. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, but unfortunately on LinkedIn, I can't add any more new connections. So I would request that, you can follow me on LinkedIn if you wish, but on Twitter, we can connect. If you follow me, I'll follow you back and we can connect, we can message each other. You have any questions, you can share with me on Twitter. So that'll be a fantastic place to connect. It's easier for me to connect on Twitter. So definitely look forward to see you on Twitter. I will share quickly my Twitter handle with all of you. Yep, I got it. Here is my Twitter handle. I'll share it with all of you guys. Definitely join me on Twitter, and we can carry on this conversation. You can ask me questions on today's topic, and I will post the link of this also on Twitter. And thank you, Sushil. Really good. Do give me your feedback. So out of 10, how much will you give me? 0 for really bad and 10 being very good. How much will you score me? Where can I improve my session? Anything you want me to change? Anything I can do better? Would love to receive your feedback. You can give, and also a request, if you can go to LinkedIn, and if you have any takeaways from this session, you can write 1, 2, 3, 4 takeaways and tag me and tag LawSikho. It will help me to get more more viewers. As you can see, the viewers are not too many today, although it's 9 p.m. I can't blame anybody, but definitely would love to get your support in spreading the word about this session. I'll feel more excited. Okay. And tomorrow I have an even more exciting session. Definitely look forward to it, and follow me on Twitter and I'll tell you what it is. Thank you everyone. Take care. Have a great night. Take care. Bye bye. And thank you for all the 10 on 10 markings. Thank you. Ratings. Very good. I really thank you from my heart. Have a great night.